Why is it that small indie games are becoming all the more thrilling as opposed to the $200 million plus AAA blockbusters of the industry? This is a question that is becoming increasingly asked by players. We've seen previously in the last few years with games like Redfall, Concord, and Skull and Bones attempt to justify their massive budgets and propaganda with no success. All the while, in the meantime, small to mid-sized projects such as Balatro, Dave the Diver, and Peak have topped Steam charts and grabbed players' attention and served as major rivals on Twitch and created the sort of word of mouth that large publishers can only dream of. However, this did not happen overnight. Indie games were perceived as 10 years ago as sweet little side projects, the type of games that you would play in between the main ones. Consider something like Super Meat Boy. They were small, experimental, and lowly infused into mainstream dialogue. However, with time, digital distribution, and other ways to pick up such titles with Steam and itch.io has allowed small indie developers solutions to make their way to the grand stage of the world. And then indie games started not only to just survive, but to also influence the future of the medium. This is not merely some freak coincidence or a stroke of really good luck among smaller studios. This is the beginning of a much more fundamental change in the industry. Today, AAA games have been inflated over the past decade to be bigger, more flamboyant, and costlier versions. But at the same point, they also began to lose their human quality, its creativity, and enjoyment. Players are becoming conscious of it, and they're voting with their wallets. They're making choices about games created by smaller and scrappier teams that seem more personal and passion-filled. And that matters. That matters a lot. This is important as games should not just be content schedules and battle passes, but rather an experience that is to be remembered. The very fact that the so-called easy-to-play deck builder poker roguelike Balatro can make you feel even more excited than a live service event launched with millions of dollars spent on marketing should give you reason to understand everything you need to know about the change in priority among players. AAA studios have just turned into soulless machines. They are more concerned about retention numbers and the purchase of battle passes more than they are about the enjoyment that the individual player can have. Instead, indies are doing well since they're not burdened with that. With smaller teams, they're able to be more experimental, take a chance and work on crazy ideas, and that is reflecting in what we're seeing today. All you have to do is see the creativity. Dredge made fishing cosmic horrifying. Dave the Diver ran restaurants and went to the bottom of the ocean. Vampire Survivors essentially redefines the concept of a roguelike loop utilizing ultimate minimalism. These games are also refreshing since they're not just spreadsheets but passion-based projects. And then there's the case of what kind of can be described as an indie game is supported by a very large publisher such as Clair Obscur Expedition 33. It remains different. The game was just released as it is. There's no day one DLC, no optional store to spend real world money, and you pay for the game once, a one-off payment, and then that's it. It's yours to consume. There's no comparison with the majority of AAA releases where you might spend half an hour outside the door looked at a $70 USD price tag and then promptly pander you with deluxe editions, early entry windows, and battle passes to temporarily add to that. The indie games are not only surviving because of this, they are prospering because they don't have this. They are proving that it works because players will arrive. They will spend the money and they will not leave when they are treated with respect and they're provided with something of actual quality. This is why nowadays we are discussing indie game majoring over AAA at their own game, and what the largest studios in the industry have to be taught before it's too late for them.
Let us proceed.
AAA gaming has never been bigger or more out of touch. The budgets are astronomical, the marketing campaigns are everywhere, and the teams behind these games number in the hundreds, sometimes thousands. Yet somehow, the final product often feels smaller, safer, and emptier than ever, unless you're including bugs, then it's filled with bugs a lot of the time. And I believe part of this problem is risk aversion. When publishers spend hundreds of millions on a single project they can't afford to fail, so they play it safe. We get the same sequels, the same remakes, and relentless march of live service games designed to keep you grinding for months. These games are built around retention metrics, daily login rewards, FOMO events. They feel less like passion projects and more like carefully engineered systems meant to maximize engagement. Corporate code for how long can we keep you spending your money. And AAA budgets don't just go into development. Marketing can match or even exceed production costs. When you spend $100 million advertising a game, you have to make it appeal to the widest possible audience, which leads to a design by committee approach, and the game begins to feel more sterile. Worse, the pressure often results in brutal crunch, developer burnout, and feature creep, all of which makes delays and buggy launches much more likely in these AAA projects. The standard has now been raised to $70 USD, by the way, and rarely the actual price of admission. Now, players are encouraged to purchase deluxe editions, pre-order bonuses, battle pass, and cosmetic bundles to make them feel like they're getting the whole package, and that's assuming that the game even works on the first day. We see the release of games such as Cyberpunk 2077, Lord of the Rings Golem, where the discussion revolved not about the game itself, but the state it actually launched in, causing months of damaged reputation and fixes. Another notorious example is Anthem, when a supposedly would-be success of an IP failed to withstand the demands of live services, and rushed structuring and planning found itself in the hands of BioWare trying to reclaim its image. And in times of critical failure of these games, the harm does not happen merely in terms of monetary aspects, they bring the studios down with them. We have witnessed wave after wave of layoffs, shutdowns, re-evaluations. Gifted developers are being laid off. Fans don't trust, and the situation with the industry is more shaky than ever before. Massive recruitments followed by expansions are now a new worrying trend, but it cannot afford it. AAA gaming is already a machine developed to generate content. Though at some point, this machine lost its way of mostly creating good games. I mean, look, let's be honest, there is still plenty of good AAA out there, but it's becoming increasingly rare to find these and increasingly rare to trust them, especially on day one of releases.
Let us proceed.
If AAA has become a lumbering giant, indie games are the agile fighters darting around its feet, and right now they're landing hit after hit. The biggest strength of indie games is freedom. Smaller teams don't have to justify every decision to a boardroom or chase the latest market trend to satisfy shareholders. They can take risks, experiment with wild ideas, and ship games that feel personal instead of manufactured. That's why we get experiences like Dredge, which turned the cozy act of fishing into a creeping cosmic horror story, or Dave the Diver, which I already also mentioned, which somehow manages to make managing a sushi restaurant as addictive as exploring the ocean depths. And then of course, another game that I already mentioned, Vampire Survivors, which seemingly came out of nowhere and reignited interest in minimalistic roguelikes, sparking a wave of imitators and inspiring AAA studios to chase the magic. Indies also win on price and value. Some can cost as low as $10 and go all the way up to $30, which feels compared to a $70 blockbusters that still try to upsell you to deluxe editions and battle passes. Even when an indie game is priced higher, like Baldur's Gate 3 for example, it still feels like a bargain because you're getting a complete product at no day one DLC, no cash shop, just a massive polished game that respects your time and your wallet. And perhaps most importantly, indie developers actually talk to their players. They post devlogs, share roadmaps, hop into Discord servers, and listen to feedback in real time. Players feel like they're part of the process and not just a revenue stream for them. Early access models have become a powerful tool when used right, allowing players to shape the game as it develops, creating a sense of ownership and a sense of loyalty that AAA rarely ever achieves. We also see indies that also able have amazing persistence. Games like Stardew Valley are not only continuing to sell, but continue to receive updates and continue to build communities even after release. But they've already sold more than 40 million copies of Stardew Valley as of 2024. Such long-tailed success shows that players will continue to return to games when they are given care to, even without the battle passes or all the FOMO events. And since most indie developers are open to modding instead of trapping and preventing it, their games might even have an extended life cycle due to community interaction that extends well past release. The indie games are not bogged down in their endless committee meetings, pivots in marketing, or quarterly profit pieces. They are handcrafted, focused experiences of individuals that love what they make and the need to make the passion evident in each frame.
Let us proceed.
Now, I know when I mentioned Baldur's Gate 3 being an indie game, I mean, technically it is, but there is some room for debate. Another one that I feel like that is Clair Obscur Expedition 33 could perhaps be regarded as one of the most recent successful examples of an indie game with hits of a AAA quality game. This came from a very small studio making something radical, a dark turn-based RPG that would not go safe when the publisher supported its marketing push. Its mechanics were not only brilliant, but that was not the magic of it. It was how it was presented, the story, and the fact that it came across as something as a complete package. You spend money on this game once. You get a completed, polished experience that is actually finished and does not have a DLC roadmap looming over your head. And despite being on Game Pass, it surpassed 1 million sales in the initial month that the game was released in, proving there was a necessity in acquiring a game like this. And then there's a game like Balatro, a game that overwhelmed the conversation and came into the forefront. It sounds like a formula killer, having a deck-building roguelike based on playing poker, but its enjoyable mechanics, lack of complicated graphics, and simplified pick up and play made it how it works like a main dish that is addictively filled over the world. Balatro existed all over the place on Twitch and YouTube within the gaming forums because it represented fun in the most basic form. Even it managed to reach 50,000 simultaneous players on Steam, which is unbelievable when it comes from a one-man production. Millions of dollars are spent by AAA studios to develop the so-called sticky engagement, but Balatro carried it with the help of just a simple yet great design. Seriously, this game was fucking everywhere when it came out. And of course, I can't go any further without mentioning Hollow Knight's Silksong, among the most long-awaited sequels in the history of video games. Created by an indie studio of below 20 employees, it's about a 3-man team if I remember right. And from what we can gather, it looks like Silksong sold more than 3 million copies on Steam in the first 2 weeks, topped up about 1.5 million downloads on the Xbox Game Pass, and moved an overall number of players around 5 million or so. It received over $50 million Steam revenue, aided by its pleasant $20 USD price cost. And most crucially, all of this paid off. It sits extremely well on Metacritic and OpenCritic, with reviewers using terms like safe in their capsules, declaring it was built on Hollow Knight formula without neglecting what made it popular with its fans. Silksong demonstrates that an indie game can also be launched with the same levels of hype as AAA blockbusters and even have high levels of sales like them as well. And to bring it back to Dave the Diver, which may be taken as another ideal illustration of things that indies do well, combining deep sea voyages, strolling weight described restaurants, and a touch of strange humor with unexpected touching story beats. It is a game that is not tightly delimited to its genre box, and is one of the reasons why people enjoyed it so much. Technically, it was created as an indie label, but Nexon Mini Rocket has captured the image of what makes indies experience special. Schedule 1 is also one of the most recent warning to how a game of little importance can engross an audience in such huge dimensions. The fact that it only takes the most bare bones approach towards storytelling and mechanics makes each choice matter, and its replayability keeps one more replaying in an effort to push systems to their utmost limits. This game is so much fun to watch on stream, man. People went crazy with this game. It's a good one. And ones that pop up later become mega hits like Vampire Survivors, Peak, even older ones like Among Us and Cult of the Lamb. These two games demonstrate that indies do not only fill voids, they absolutely also create new trends and genres in some cases, many years after launching. They do not simply sell, but they're part of gaming culture. On the same list, we can put Slay the Spire, which effectively fulfilled the role of deck-building roguelike subgenre, and of course Hollow Knight set the standard of what a Metroidvania can be in the indie scene. These are not merely just good games, but they've also become genre referrals that both players and critics go to discuss several years later. And of course, there's always a level of luck when it comes to an indie success, but a lot of these are products of developers having permission to just do what they like because they don't have any corporate structure overhead, create something special and present it in a manner that is perceived as just as respectful to the players. Those games aren't merely just good, but they are a direction that the industry should be progressing towards.
Let us proceed.
The point that the indie community is doing well is because they take risks that the AAA just needs to start doing and stop playing it safe. Their lesson to the AAA must also be to stop spending money in ways that are known to burn in all the wrong direction of the game they are creating. Control of the budgets is an initial concern that AAA must consider first. Games do not necessarily have to creep cost the $200 million mark to be good. The result of bloated budgets is a bloated team and an indefinite number of layers of management that can lead to decades of development hell, whereby creativity has gone astray in the bureaucracy. The more expensive the game is, the less risk publishers want to undertake, and that is why we continue to get safe sequels and live service games which are not trend-setting. This leads into our next point. Just stop with the over-expansion that will lead to more people being laid off in the future. We've already witnessed how this repeats itself over and over again, where a publisher hires thousands of individuals to man the project on a huge scale, takes several years to produce it, and when the game does not perform to expectations, complete studios are closed. This is disastrous to developers and debilitating to long-term welfare of the industry. Smaller, intensive teams do not only produce more efficient ones, but also better and more unified games since everyone shares identical knowledge and is usually on the same page as one another. Bloat is another thing that just has to go away with AAA. Not all games have to be some massive 100-hour map marker simulator full of checklist information. Players are not demanding the largest map in history with the ability to play within 300 hours of the game. They demand games that acknowledge their time. They want something that is more enjoyable throughout and not something that wastes their time. Quality over quantity, basically. And then of course there is the lack of taking risk. At this point, AAA just plays it safe to save those huge budgets, and it is not surprising, but this gives us a homogeneous market. More games should be willing to take a swing that may not attract everybody. This is also something that AAA is forced to achieve again. Trust and transparency with players. Good faith has been ground out of the sandpaper of the endless loop of pre-orders, early access paywalls, battle passes, vague roadmaps, development delays. People do not simply desire hype trailers, we want integrity. Let us know what we are getting on day one, report when some delay is occurring and the reason. And most of all, deliver a fully completed game. Since that is the last, possibly, but certainly most important lesson, before you sell your games, you must finish them. Players are beyond fed up paying $70 USD to buy half-completed products with the assurance that they'll be improved in half a year's time. Indie developers, however, deliver slick-in, ready-to-go experience at the lowest possible price, and when they do provide subsequent content, most of the time it's a free update or they only charge a few dollars rather than the ransom note that normally comes with AAA games. Provided AAA will control their budgets, maintain their studios on a lean, and get rid of the filler, be honest in communication, and affectionately conclude their games, they will get their players back. Otherwise, gamers will continue voting with their wallets, which will accrete to future success of future indie games. I've already listed a handful of examples here, but I'm sure you in the chat can provide more successful indie games in the comments down below.
Let us proceed.
I don't want to say AAA gaming is dead. Like I said, we do get good AAA games and we do see record number of players, usually for a brief amount of time before the drop-off. However, AAA gaming in the industry is at a crossroads. Players are fed up with paying more to get less, fed up with half-finished launches, one less empty roadmap after another, fed up with the inconsistent and over-the-top monetization and meaningless roadmaps. And though the largest publishers continue to follow this bandwagon, indie developers are just continuing to create the future of gaming on many dedicated handcrafted projects at a time. Not a standard time waster. Games like Expedition 33, Balatro, Dave the Diver, Schedule 1, Vampire Survivors, and many, many more are evidence that there is no kind of game players do not wish to be occupied with. They demonstrate that you will not require a $1 billion budget or whatever it is, or the staff of thousands of people to create something memorable. All you have is the insight, concentration, and admiration of the players who control your game. The industry is being offered an upward path without bigger budgets, reduced workforces, and more ambitious plans and games that are full on day one of release. It is another question whether AAA will listen, however. But the beauty is, however, players win either way. If AAA doesn't want to listen, there's plenty of indies that will. And that's one of the most exciting things about this. I still don't think players don't actually understand the power that we have. All the wish lists, all the purchases, and all the positive reviews are a vote of the type of games we want to see more often. With that said, here's the question that I want to pose to you. Which was the last indie game you played that amazed you in many possible ways? Was it one of the ones I listed? One of the ones I haven't at least said? Put it in the comments so we can make a little list of indie games to help other people find better indies out there. And I want to thank you all so much for watching this video. Give me your thoughts and your favorite indies in the comment section down below. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Share the video around, all that good stuff. And if you really did enjoy the video, consider becoming a channel member, as it really does help with the production of these videos. And we'll see you all in the next one.